I still remember the first time I saw him. It was one of those evenings when the sky was bruised with shades of violet and orange, and I was sitting alone at a cafe, half listening to the chatter around me, half lost in my own little world. And then he walked in. Tall, confident, dressed in a navy blue suit that seemed a little too sharp for the casual vibe of the place. He caught my eyes almost immediately. His name was Daniel. And little did I know, he would be both the love of my life and the cruelest betrayal I'd ever experience. At that moment though, when he smiled at me for the first time, none of that mattered. His smile was disarming, the kind that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. When he approached me, introduced himself, and asked if he could sit, I felt a spark, a genuine, undeniable pull toward him. I should have seen the red flags later on. But love has a way of blinding you, doesn't it? Falling for him. The weeks after that first meeting were a blur of endless conversations, midnight phone calls, long walks in the city, and little moments that made me believe he was my soulmate. He remembered small details about me, like how I liked my coffee, or how I hated the sound of ticking clocks at night. He wasn't just charming, he was attentive. He made me laugh when I was stressed, comforted me when I was low, and held me like I was fragile glass he could never afford to break. Within months, my friends joked that I was glowing, and honestly I was. I thought I had finally found the one. When he proposed 2 years later, under a canopy of fairy lights, with my favorite song playing softly in the background, I didn't even hesitate. I said yes with tears streaming down my face. I thought it was the happiest moment of my life. But happiness can be deceptive. It can cover up the darkest shadows. The first signs. Looking back, the first signs of his betrayal were so small, so subtle, that I brushed them off without a second thought. The late-night calls he'd quickly silence when I walked into the room. The sudden business trips, that always seemed to come at the worst times. The way he avoided introducing me to some of his colleagues, as though there were secrets tucked into the very fabric of his professional life. First I laughed about it. He's just busy, I told myself. He's ambitious, he's working hard for our future. But sometimes, when I'd wake up in the middle of the night and glance at him, I'd see the faint glow of his phone screen as he texted someone with a smile he never showed me anymore. I ignored it, because I loved him too much to even imagine the alternative. The discovery. The truth came crashing into me like a wrecking ball one rainy Thursday evening. I was at his apartment. We hadn't moved in together yet, though it was part of our plan after the wedding. He was in the shower, his phone buzzing on the nightstand. Normally I would never snoop. I respected his privacy. I trusted him. But something inside me, some quiet, anxious voice, urged me to pick it up. And so I did. The message that lit up the screen was from a name I didn't recognize. It read, "I miss you already. Can't wait to see you tonight. Don't forget you promised me the first dance at your wedding." Winking face. My heart stopped. At first I thought maybe it was a joke, a friend messing around. But as my hands shook, I scrolled through their messages. Dozens, hundreds, all filled with intimacy, longing, and details that cut me open like glass. He wasn't just cheating. He was in love with someone else. And the worst part, that someone was a man. The hidden lover. I sat there, frozen, as reality unraveled around me. All the late nights, the secretive smiles, the sudden distance. It all made sense now. His lover's name was Michael. I pieced together enough from the texts to know they had been together for over a year. He wasn't just some fling, some mistake. He was important to Daniel. Important enough that he promised him a special moment, even on the day of our wedding. My chest tightened as I realized I had been nothing more than a cover-up, a convenient shield for him to hide behind. Tears streamed down my face, but beneath the heartbreak, another feeling began to grow. Started small like a flicker, but soon it consumed me entirely. Revenge. The breaking point. When Daniel stepped out of the shower that night, he found me sitting stiffly on the bed, his phone clutched in my trembling hands. He froze. His eyes flicked from me to the phone, and for the first time I saw panic in his expression. "You went through my phone?" he asked, voice low. I wanted to scream, to throw the phone at him, to demand answers. But instead I just whispered, "Who is Michael?" Silence. The kind of silence that feels heavy, suffocating. And then, in a moment I'll never forget, he sat down across from me, buried his face in his hands and muttered, "I didn't mean for you to find out like this." Those words shattered me. Not denial. Not "it's not what it looks like." But a quiet, guilty confession. I don't remember much of what happened after that. Just shouting, tears, him begging me to understand, me begging him to tell me why. But what I do remember, clear as crystal, was the thought that lodged itself in my mind that night. He doesn't get to humiliate me. Not like this. Not at the altar. Not in front of everyone. If he wanted a wedding, he would get one. But it would not end the way he imagined. I don't think I slept at all that night. After the confrontation, Daniel left his own apartment, slamming the door so hard that the frames rattled on the walls. I sat there in the silence, numb, staring at nothing. My body felt hollow, like I was floating in some dark, endless space where pain and disbelief were the only companions. I should have walked away right then. I should have called off the wedding, told my family, told everyone what kind of man he really was. But instead I did the unthinkable. I stayed. A hollow engagement. The days that followed were unbearable. On the surface, nothing had changed. Our families still exchanged cheerful calls, the florist still confirmed the flowers, the seamstress still fussed over the final touches of my dress. But underneath, everything was poisoned. Daniel avoided the topic as much as he could. He begged me not to ruin everything we had, over what he called a mistake. A mistake. He had whispered love to another man for a year. That wasn't a slip. That was a double life. Whenever he held me, I felt cold. Whenever he kissed me, I wanted to scrub my lips raw. But I smiled through it all. Because I had decided something. If he wanted to play this charade, I would play it better. And when the curtain finally dropped, it would be my performance that everyone remembered. My nights alone. It's strange, the things you think about when you're betrayed. I would lie awake staring at the ceiling, asking myself questions that had no answers. Did he ever really love me? Was every moment we shared a lie? When he told me I was his future, was he already sneaking off to hold Michael's hand? The thoughts tore at me like wild animals, but eventually, the pain began to turn into something sharper, something steadier, determination. If I had been the fool in his story, I would rewrite the ending. Planting the seeds. Revenge isn't something you can rush. It's like gardening. You have to plant seeds carefully, water them with patience, and wait until the bloom is undeniable. So that's what I did. I started small. Smiling at him as though I believed every lie he fed me. Asking about work, pretending to be excited about the honeymoon. Holding his hand during family dinners. All the while, I watched him squirm under the weight of his own guilt. I began documenting everything. Screenshots of his texts, photos of him leaving late at night, even a recording of one of our arguments where he admitted he was confused but couldn't let Michael go. Piece by piece I was building my arsenal. The allies. It wasn't long before I realized I couldn't do this alone. So, I confided in my maid of honor, Clara. Clara had been my best friend since childhood, the kind of person who would bury a body for me without asking why. When I told her about Daniel's hidden lover, her jaw clenched so tightly I thought her teeth might crack. "Are you serious?" she whispered. "Dead serious," I said. Clara wanted me to cancel everything, but when she saw the fire in my eyes, she understood. She didn't argue. She just nodded and said, "Tell me what you need me to do." With her help, I started to shape my plan more concretely. She would be my second pair of eyes, my co-conspirator, the one who helped me weave the trap Daniel would never see coming. The guest list. The thing about weddings is, they're not just about two people, they're about everyone. Families, friends, colleagues. It's a stage, and everyone gets a ticket to the show. That gave me the perfect weapon. Because what better place to expose a liar than in front of everyone he was trying to impress? I scanned the guest list carefully. His parents, his co-workers, his boss, even a few distant relatives who traveled across the country. Everyone who mattered to him would be there. Everyone who believed in the illusion of Daniel, the perfect groom. And on that day, they would all watch his mask shatter. The encounter. About a week before the wedding, something unexpected happened. I saw Michael. It was by accident. I was coming out of a boutique, carrying a box of last-minute bridal accessories, when I noticed a man across the street staring at me. First, I thought he was just another stranger. But then he smiled, a small, knowing smile, and I knew. Michael. He looked nothing like I imagined. Neat, well-dressed, charming even. The kind of man who didn't need to hide in shadows. He walked toward me with the kind of confidence that made my skin crawl. "So you must be the bride," he said softly. His eyes gleaming with something that wasn't quite guilt, but amusement. I froze, unsure how to respond. But before I could speak, he leaned in, close enough that I could smell his cologne, and whispered, "Don't worry. He'll always come back to me." And then he walked away. I stood there trembling, my nails digging into my palms until they left crescent marks in my skin. That was the moment I knew my revenge wasn't just necessary. It was destiny. Setting the stage. The final days before the wedding were a blur of rehearsals, fittings, and endless chatter about flowers, music, and decorations. To everyone else, I looked like a radiant bride-to-be. But inside I was sharpening my knives. I rehearsed my lines like an actress preparing for her role. Every smile I gave Daniel was calculated, every laugh rehearsed. I let him think I was his obedient fiancé, still blinded by love. But behind the curtain I had everything ready. The screenshots, the recordings, the truth. All I needed was the perfect moment to let it explode. The night before the wedding, Daniel and I had dinner with both of our families. Everyone was laughing, toasting to our future. Daniel squeezed my hand under the table, smiling at me like nothing was wrong. I wanted to scream. I wanted to stand up and tell them all right then and there. But I waited, because tomorrow would be bigger. Tomorrow everyone would be watching. And tomorrow Daniel's world would burn. The morning of my wedding arrived with golden light streaming through the curtains, but instead of joy, I felt only the heavy weight of what was to come. I stared at myself in the mirror, dressed in white satin, a veil framing my face. I looked like the perfect bride, glowing, delicate, everything I was supposed to be. But behind my eyes, there was nothing soft, only steel. "Are you ready?" Clara asked softly, adjusting the veil. She caught my reflection in the mirror and gave me a look that said she knew exactly what I was about to do. "Yes," I whispered. "More than ever." Walking down the aisle. The music swelled and the church doors opened. My father's arm was warm and steady as he guided me forward. Rows of smiling faces turned toward me, phones raised, eyes shining with expectation. And there he was, Daniel, my groom, waiting at the altar, looking breathtaking in his suit. His eyes damp with emotion. To anyone else, he looked like a man in love. But I knew better. Each step I took echoed with my secret. Each step carried me closer to the stage where I would destroy him. When I finally reached him, he took my hands in his. His palms were slightly sweaty, his grip firm. "You look beautiful," he whispered. Smiled. "Thank you." And inside I thought, "You won't think so when this is over." The vows. The priest spoke the familiar words, his voice booming across the church. Daniel and I repeated the traditional vows, promising love and faithfulness, until death do us part. When it was my turn, I looked Daniel straight in the eye and said my vows with the conviction of a saint. But each word tasted like ash on my tongue. Finally, it was time for the exchange of personal vows. Daniel went first. His voice trembled as he spoke about how I was the light of his life, and how he couldn't wait to build a future with me. The guests dabbed at their eyes, moved by his performance. If only they knew. When it was my turn, I held the microphone, my hands steady. I smiled at the audience, then back at him. And then I began. The reveal. "Daniel," I said, my voice clear. "When I met you, I thought I had found my soulmate. I believed in every word you told me, every promise you made. I thought we were building a future based on love, trust, and honesty. A murmur of admiration rippled through the crowd. I paused, letting the silence stretch, and then continued. But sometimes love blinds us. Sometimes the person we think we know turns out to be a stranger. Sometimes the vows we plan to make are built on lies. The murmurs grew louder. I saw confusion in Daniel's eyes. He shifted uncomfortably, squeezing my hand. "What are you doing?" he hissed under his breath. I ignored him. I discovered something before this day. Something that shattered me. But I realized it would be unfair to keep this a secret. Not from our families, not from our friends, and not from myself. I reached into the folds of my dress and pulled out my phone. Clara had helped me prepare everything. With one tap, the speakers filled with Daniel's own voice, recorded the night he confessed. "I didn't mean for you to find out like this." Gasps echoed through the church. Daniel's face went pale, his eyes wide with horror. And then the slideshow began. On the big screen behind us, meant for a sentimental video of our love story, appeared screenshots of his messages with Michael. The flirtations, plans, the promises. Even the one where he told Michael he couldn't wait to give him the first dance at the wedding. The church erupted. Chaos. Gasps turned to whispers, whispers to shouting. Daniel stumbled back, his hands trembling. This isn't what it looks like," he stammered, but no one was listening. And then, as if fate itself had orchestrated the scene, the doors at the back of the church opened. Michael walked in. He strode down the aisle with a calm, almost smug expression. "You weren't supposed to show them," he said loudly, his voice echoing. "You promised me." The room erupted into chaos. Guests shouted, families stood frozen, cameras recorded everything. Daniel's mother fainted. His father's face turned beet red with fury. And me. I stood there, perfectly still, my veil fluttering slightly in the air conditioning, my heart steady. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said into the microphone, my voice calm against the storm. "I present to you the man I almost married. Liar. A cheater. Coward. And the man he truly loves." Pointed to Michael. The fallout. Daniel lunged for the microphone, but Clara stepped between us, fierce as a lioness. Guests began standing, some leaving in disgust, others pulling out their phones to capture the scandal. Michael smirked, enjoying the destruction. "You should have just chosen me, Danny," he said. "Now look at you." Daniel's face twisted with rage and shame. He turned to me, his voice breaking. "You don't understand. I never wanted to hurt you." Cut him off. "You already did." And then, with the whole world watching, I dropped the microphone. The thud echoed like a gunshot. I lifted my dress slightly, turned and walked down the aisle, not as a bride, but as a woman reborn. Aftermath. Outside the church, the sunlight hit me like freedom. My family rushed after me, my father demanding explanations, my mother in tears. But Clara stayed close, her arm wrapped tightly around mine. Inside, the chaos raged on. But I didn't look back. Not once. Daniel would have to live with the ruins of his perfect image, the whispers of colleagues, the shame of his family, and the endless replay of his humiliation. And Michael, let him have him. Let them destroy each other. As for me, I had already won. A final thought. That night, as I lay in bed in my childhood room, makeup washed away, hair undone, I stared at the ceiling with a strange calmness. Yes, I had been betrayed. Yes, my heart had been shattered. But I had taken back my power. And in the end, revenge didn't feel like fire. Felt like silence. A peace. As I walked down that aisle, the eyes of hundreds burned into my back. Some pitied me, some admired me, and some simply couldn't look away from the wreckage I had left behind. My heels clicked steadily against the marble floor, each step sounding like a drumbeat of freedom. Outside, the air hit me like a wave, cool, fresh, untainted by the lies I had just left behind. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt like I could breathe again. Behind me, the church was in chaos. Guests shouted, families clashed, Daniel's father yelled in fury, and Michael's laugh echoed like a cruel soundtrack to the disaster. But I didn't stop. I didn't turn back. That was their battlefield now, not mine. Clara hurried to my side, her hand slipping into mine. "You did it," she whispered, her voice trembling. He nodded. "No, we did." The driver opened the door of the car meant to whisk us away to the reception. I slid inside, not as a bride, but as a woman who had turned her own heartbreak into power. Later that night, alone in my room, I thought about everything. About Daniel's face crumbling, about Michael's smug grin, about the silence that followed after I dropped the microphone. I should have felt empty. I should have felt broken. But instead I felt something else. Daniel had taken my trust, my love, my dreams of a future. But I had taken his mask, ripped it away, and left him bare for the world to see. And that was enough. My final words. If love is supposed to be a story, then ours was a tragedy. But the ending belonged to me.